So previously mentioned, LETECIA voluntarily came to the EPSO for an interview with investigators, but only after she was evasive and avoided speaking with investigators one-on-one. Her interview was audio and video recorded, and the information included her own statements as well as investigation geared towards corroborating those statements. In general, her statements are reasonably categorized as untruthful, incomplete, and misleading. LETECIA was supposed to arrive at 10 a.m. on January 29th, 2020, but did not arrive until noon. Although she spoke with investigators on the phone several times, she did not want investigators coming to her home and was difficult at best to track down. Investigators provided food and water to LETECIA during the interview. Of interest, LETECIA brought several pieces of notebook paper with her that contained notes she had written down. During the interview, she referred to these pieces of paper and asked investigators if she could just read her notes. Investigators were not able to seize these documents. I have conducted hundreds of interviews of subjects, victims, and witnesses. It is extremely rare for an individual to bring notes to an interview. LETECIA drastically departed from her initial statements given to EPSO deputies regarding the report of Gannon's disappearance. In summary, LETECIA said she had been held at gunpoint and raped by a Hispanic male she knew as Eduardo, and that Gannon was abducted by that male after he finished raping her. The interviewing detectives believed her statements were false based on prior evidence investigating sexual assault cases. LETECIA said she arrived home around 14:30 hours on January 27th, and she disarmed her security system and then went into the basement. She said that Eduardo was in the basement, attacked her, and pointed a gun at her. She said that after Eduardo held her at gunpoint, he allowed her to go upstairs to greet her stepdaughter Lena STAUCH, who had just arrived home from school. LETECIA said she sent her outside to ride her bike, then returned to the basement where Eduardo vaginally penetrated her against her will between 15:30 and 16:30 hours. During this period, she believed that she had hit her head and may have blacked out. Investigators noted no injuries on LETECIA's head during their contact with her. LETECIA also said that during the attack, Gannon jumped on Eduardo's back and that Eduardo was able to throw Gannon off of his back and across the room. After Eduardo had finished, he had the gun held to Gannon and demanded a suitcase. LETECIA provided him with a brown suitcase and a cardboard box. Eduardo attempted to sexually assault her again, but she hit her head and blacked out again. LETECIA stated that she tried to fight Eduardo off but was unsuccessful. I know from training and experience that if an individual holds another person at gunpoint, he or she would likely not allow the person to have opportunity for escape, as LETECIA described being allowed to greet her stepdaughter upstairs before returning to the basement. Most crucially, if LETECIA's story was accurate, any reasonable person would have immediately called 911 and reported the home invasion, rape and kidnapping of their child. LETECIA called law enforcement hours later and did not report the alleged rape until approximately 2 days later. Of even more significance, LETECIA said she cleaned up the area where this alleged attack had happened. She straightened up signs of disturbances in Gannon's room and cleaned up the utility rooms. Investigators recovered cleaning supplies such as carpet brushes, which contained suspected carpet fibres. I submit that LETECIA did in fact clean something up, but it was the murder scene of Gannon, not a sexual assault. Investigators took steps to corroborate LETECIA's statements before dismissing them as false and misleading. For example, investigators reviewed video footage from a neighbourhood security camera that captured the exterior of the STAUCH residence from the day of Gannon's murder and did not observe a Hispanic male entering the house. Investigators did observe Lena arrive home on the school bus at or about 15-11 hours, observed her enter the residence, and observed her riding her bike at or about 15:30 hours. Furthermore, LETECIA was offered the opportunity to have a sexual assault nurse examiner conduct a forensic examination at a local hospital. Ultimately, LETECIA did not want to have the exam completed. When given the opportunity to provide investigators with evidence that would possibly identify Eduardo, LETECIA refused to cooperate. LETECIA stated that she met Eduardo on January 26, 2020, the day prior to Gannon's murder. She generally described a Hispanic male with brown hair and brown eyes, but could not provide any specific identifying information. In summary, she told investigators that Gannon had knocked over a candle on Sunday, causing the carpet to burn. After that incident, she drove around the neighbourhood where residential construction was taking place. She met Eduardo, who was working on a house, and asked if he would repair the carpet in her home. Eduardo agreed, and LETECIA provided him the garage door code, and they agreed he would repair the carpet while she was shopping the next day. To the extent LETECIA spoke about Lena, investigators were able to corroborate those statements, but never observed Eduardo or anyone else arrive or leave the residence during that time period, based on exterior neighbourhood video footage of the front of the STAUCH residence. Specifically, exterior video footage revealed that Lena was riding her bike outside between approximately 15:30 and 15:42 hours. Furthermore, the front door of the residence opened and closed at 15:28 hours based on data from ADT security system, discussed more below. I know from training and experience that when individuals concoct lies, most reasonably to conceal the truth, they oftentimes leave portions of truths within those lies. I submit that the statements LETECIA made reference Lena and the time period Lena was at the residence are likely true based on video evidence. Her other statements, however, are blatant lies designed to mislead investigators. Investigators also reviewed LETECIA's phone records during the time period of the alleged rape of 15:30 to 16:30 hours on January 27th. During this time period, LETECIA had phone activity to include an outgoing phone call and numerous iMessages, text messages using an iPhone, to Mr. STAUCH and Harley, namely to discuss purchasing a new set of headphones for Albert. These text messages occurred at the following times: 15:41, 15:42, 15:43, 15:44, 15:45, 16:11, 16:19 and 16:20. Investigators also were granted a search warrant by this court that was served to ADT Home Security, which requested data stored on the ADT servers related to the STAUCH residence. The STAUCH residence was equipped with basement and living room motion detectors and contact detectors on the front and rear door. ADT was in possession of logs that documented the time, date and type of event that generated a log. For example, when either motion detector was activated or the front or rear doors opened or closed, there is a record of that event. LETECIA claimed she was raped in the basement between 14:30 and 15:30 hours. During that time, the back door of the residence, located on the main level, was opened and closed 10 times. If indeed LETECIA was being raped in the basement, it would be impossible for her to open the upstairs back door of the residence at the same time. I submit that LETECIA's claims of being raped in the basement are false based on her cell phone activity and the stored ADT data. The logs from ADT indicate significant activity in the basement of the residence, where evidence suggests Gannon was murdered. For example, between January 23rd and January 26th, and the hours of 1500 to 1700, the average number of basement motion events was 3.5. On January 27th, the average number of basement motion events was 10.3. A possible scenario for the increase in activity is that LETECIA was going upstairs and downstairs in order to get cleaning supplies and cleaning the murder scene. Towards the end of the interview, LETECIA said she wanted to leave. Investigators seized her telephone and detained her while they applied for a search warrant to obtain DNA collection. LETECIA began stuffing tissues in her pants and said she was having chest pain and shortness of breath. Investigators immediately requested medical assistance, and paramedics from the Colorado Springs Fire Department arrived. LETECIA had appropriate responses to the paramedics' questions. I am aware that LETECIA has made statements regarding Gannon's disappearance to individuals other than law enforcement, including but not limited to her friend, her husband, and the media. Indeed, some of those conversations have been captured and memorialized in recorded phone conversations and email messages. LETECIA's stories have continued to evolve and material facts continue to change, including but not limited to the identity of her attacker, the location of Gannon's abduction, and details of the alleged rape. During her statements, LETECIA did deny killing Gannon and provided explanations as to why there was blood in her Tiguan, blood in Gannon's room, and why she was in the area of Palmer Lake, Colorado.